All right, folks, we are back with an XRP and Clarity Act update. Will we get this landmark market structure bill signed into law by President Trump before the government shuts down this month? The reason why I'm bringing this up is because I do think it's a risk that we do have to consider that could bring this market back down. Now, in the meantime, I do expect the market to continue to the upside in anticipation of us getting this bill signed, moving in the right direction, but I'm not going to hold my breath dealing with this Congress that likes to do the DC dance and a lot of talking versus the action and the steps to actually get something done, like passing Clarity Act into law. So we're going to show you the downside, risk, and exposure that we want to consider. And then we're going to break down why XRP, despite having its own clarity as being a digital asset that's not a security, it still needs the Clarity Act to be signed to get that broader institutional adoption that we've been, trying to build out and see, not just for XRP, but for our broader crypto sector as a whole. So without further ado, we're going to get into the update. I appreciate you guys for stopping by. Here, we're going to get the bad and the ugly out of the way first. And I'm interested to hear from you guys in the comments down below. What do you make of blockchain backer? And I got to give them credit. BCB had actually just sent me a note here last week, and it was a very nice note. I want to say thank you to him for that. But what do you guys make of BCB showing us the scenario here, XRP kind of following a older fractal that could take us down somewhere ugly that we don't really want to go? Or maybe you do want to go there if you still want to accumulate more XRP. But let me know in the comments down below what you think about this. We're following along with this fractal right here. And if this plays out, right, we're going to have a big correction on our way. Why would this happen? In my opinion, the only reason something like this happens is we get black swan. We get a big bomb dropping, we get some big catalyst taking place, and the market just falls out beneath us. The other thing would be a government shutdown at the end of this month. And maybe this doesn't take us into a long drawn out bear market, but it does pull back our market if the Clarity Act doesn't get signed this month, when folks are starting to get excited and, the market makers are taking advantage of that excitement, pumping us up through the first part of 2026, leading up to this government shutdown that is looming at the end of the month. And in my opinion, this is very likely, right? This is a very likely scenario. I don't believe that we're going into a long drawn bear market, but I am watching for this, buy the rumor, sell the news on the Clarity Act. But then just on the shorter time frame here in January, kind of a buy the rumor running up to the Clarity Act being voted on right before the government is set to shut down. The odds of this passing are not likely for this month. And that's what we have to remember. As excited as we are about this, and we're hoping that it's going to pass here in 2026 at some point, we get ahead of ourselves in this market. And the market makers get behind that, they fuel it, they get the sentiment out there right before they pull out the rug. And so we can confirm that we do have the Senate Egg Committee that's going to be holding its own markup of the crypto market structure legislation on January 15th. And you also have the Senate Banking Committee meeting on the same day. They're going to be marking up their portion of the bill. These two panels share jurisdiction of the federal financial market regulation. Now, I asked Grok to break down the next steps that need to be done for this to get passed into law. And then I also asked Grok, what are the odds of this passing before the end of January? And here is what Grok has to say. So first, we're going to go to the committee markup and vote. Senate Banking Committee, along with the Senate Egg Committee, both are scheduled for January 15th next week. If approved by the committee, the bill moves forward for a full Senate vote. It would likely need 60 votes to invoke cloture and overcome a potential filibuster, requiring bipartisan support. This could happen shortly after markup if momentum builds, potentially by late January. But then after that, reconciliation, if needed, would have to happen if the Senate passes a version that's different from the House's. A conference committee from both chambers would reconcile the differences into a unified bill. Right. And so right now you do have slightly different versions. They'd have to then, reconcile a unified bill and then have another final vote in both chambers to the reconciled version. then it could move to President Trump's desk where it would get signed right away. We know that that's going to happen. This process could accelerate due to pressure from the White House and industry, but delays are common if negotiations stall or if other priorities, government funding deadlines, intervene. The odds of passing before the end of January 2026, Kalshi is showing a 42% chance before April 2026 and a 69% chance before May. So the odds in the first half of this year are pretty good. The odds here in January, not so strong. Polymarket odds for passage have improved to 35%, though this isn't tied strictly to January, right? So no one's really, expecting this to get signed this month, but just the narratives, and now that it's going to be front and center, the committee markups are going to be taking place, it gets everybody excited. The market makers can fuel that. And as we started out 2026, you've seen they've already pumped this thing up. And so I'm kind of expecting them to pump this sucker up a little bit more before we're up against that government shutdown here at the end of the month. So be prepared for that. The other, and it's just unfortunate that here we find ourselves in a position where we're having to rehash issues that were already solved in the Genius Act. Patrick Witt, who is the executive director, President's Council of Advisors for Digital Assets, says for the anti-rewards yield crowd currently threatening to withhold their support for the Clarity Act, I would remind you that tanking the bill over this issue preserves the status quo which you allege is intolerable. You will have achieved nothing. Be reasonable. And we're going to have to hold these people accountable in the midterms. If they do not get the Clarity Act signed this year, that will be a complete failure. Just on that point alone. Not considering all the other nonsense that these politicians have been doing in D.C. And I'm talking about both sides of the aisle. The failures on both sides, Republican and Democrat, to not just get the Clarity Act signed, but the other things that they've been. And this is why I call it the D.C. dance. Both sides of them, same song and dance, same rhythm. And it's so frustrating as an American. So Patrick Witt, I will remind everybody, he was at the Ripple Swell conference, had a great conversation on the stage up there at Swell, and he predicted that we're going to a $10 trillion asset class for the overall crypto market cap. So to say that, the White House is bullish might be a little bit of an understatement. But I wanted to address this in today's video because there's a lot of confusion, a lot of claims that are being put out there that XRP will be able to get significant institutional adoption in the United States without the Clarity Act just because we have the ruling from the judge that XRP is not a security. That's not true. It's just not true. And it was reiterated by many people at the Ripple Swell conference when I was there in the room speaking face-to-face with bankers and institutions that are building on the XRP ledger and partnering up with Ripple. And they were up on stage saying the same thing. They can't move until they have the rules of the road. Yes, they might be able to buy and sell XRP. They can roll out XRP ETFs, but they can't use XRP or any other crypto at scale until they have the rules of the road. And that's why it's so important for us to get this Clarity Act passed, and not to dwell on the excuses and the underperformance of 2025, but one of the reasons why we fell short in 2025 was because we didn't get the Clarity Act passed. It's the reason why we still, to this day, do not have banks and institutions flipping switches and going live, bringing liquidity on chain, because they can't. Not until they have the rules of the road. And Reese Merrick breaks this down, Senior Executive Officer, Managing Director at Ripple. To confirm, because somebody asked him, can you confirm if XRP needs the Clarity Act to succeed fully? From this post and from what I thought, it already has its own clarity and doesn't need it. And see, this is why I'm addressing this here in today's video. There's a lot of confusion. There's a lot of people out there making claims that, XRP, we're going to be able to go live with all these banks in America before the Clarity Act passes. It's not going to happen. Reese, to confirm XRP has secured clear regulatory status as a non-security digital asset in the United States. That's fantastic, right? This landmark court ruling, making it one of the few cryptocurrencies with such a definitive standing in the United States. With that being said, the U.S. still lacks comprehensive regulatory clarity for the broader crypto ecosystem, which continues to hold back U.S.-based entities from fully thriving and innovating in this space. At Ripple, we're actively advocating for better, more thoughtful frameworks to level the playing field and drive the next phase of growth. We're optimistic that progress on bills like the Clarity Act will deliver that much needed clarity in the near term. So it's coming. But until then, these banks and institutions, like you said, it's holding back US-based entities from fully thriving and innovating in this space. And so I wish that we would see, and by the way, I still believe that XRP is going to run before the Clarity Act. As I'm saying, buy the rumor, sell the news plays out with these events every single time. So I'm expecting XRP to print a couple multiples, 100, 200% maybe, right, to the upside before the Clarity Act passes. And I think that a lot of people will get left behind because they'll get confused here. Oh, nothing's going to happen till the laws are passed. Wrong. You're going to be buying XRP at a lot higher prices by the time that Clarity Act passes. And we've already ran up. Another buy the rumor, sell the news event. Now, and this is the type of institutional adoption that we want to see, but it's not happening here in the United States. It's happening outside of our country. And this is just one example with Canton Network. I told you guys here recently that I got invested into Canton Network, buying the ticker CC. And what is announced here today, tokenization of deposits will reshape how businesses manage and move money. The UK's first gilt purchase using tokenized deposits was completed by Lloyds Bank and Archax on Canton Network, marking the first issuance of tokenized sterling deposits on a public blockchain globally. We're late. We're not on the timeline that we wanted to be on. Back when we thought that the flip of the switch with banks and institutions for XRP and other cryptos was going to happen back in 2020 and 2021. Now, does it mean that it's not going to happen? No, it is. We're on the right path. Clarity Act's going to pass in America. They've passed regulations and have it set in other jurisdictions, which is why you're seeing press releases like this one, where Canton Network was chosen with Lloyds Bank and Archax, marking the first issuance of tokenized sterling deposits on a public blockchain globally. It's not happening in the US, it's happening in other jurisdictions because of our lack of rules of the road. But the good news is it's coming this year. It's part of the macro tailwinds with QE, lower rates, business cycle expanding. Clarity Act will be passed at some point, hopefully. And this is all part of the 2026 bull run that we're going to witness and observe. But in the meantime, I bring forward these concerns, the potential of a government shutdown and them not getting the Clarity Act passed into law this month, which could then bring our market back down. Guess who will be a buyer? Guess who's not going to be shaken out? Because we see the fundamentals, we see the macro, and we see the trillion-dollar tailwinds and the tokenization of all these markets that go into the quadrillions of dollars that is just now beginning in jurisdictions outside this country and soon, hopefully, in the United States as well. So that's the XRP and Clarity Act update for now. We will keep you guys posted. Next week, the markup votes are scheduled. So stay tuned. Make sure you subscribe, hit that notification bell. And if you appreciate our content, help us out by liking the video, sharing it out far and wide. All of our community resources are available at zachrector.com. Thank you so much. I am your host, Zach Rector. I really appreciate all of the love and support. If you want to support the channel, just remember that you can start by smashing that thumbs up for me, sharing this content far and wide, and everything else is at my website.